Hey friends, welcome back to Harvest Moon Farm. My name is Mickey, and this is week 4 of my $20 grocery budget. So if you have not seen any of this series, this is sort of like a pantry challenge on steroids. So I gave myself, starting at the beginning of April, I gave myself a $20 a week grocery budget because we have so much food in our house. We have several freezers full of meat and frozen vegetables and just, pre-made freezer meals. And we have tons of eggs. Our chickens are, of course, laying like crazy right now. And we will soon be, well, I say soon, we will in the next month or so start being able to harvest things from the garden. And I've got tons of things in my downstairs food storage. So there's really not much that we should be buying at the grocery store. A little bit of fresh vegetables and fruit right now before things start producing, and dairy because I don't have any way to produce my own dairy at this moment. So I'm trying to just use what we've got and make do with that, and really making do is not a big thing because we have plenty. So I've got a partial loaf of sourdough bread left over, and so I decided we were going to have BLTs for dinner. So I put mayonnaise on one side of the bread, and I put the leftover Big Mac sauce that I made in one of the previous videos on one side, and it was absolutely delicious that way. So obviously I bought the lettuce and tomato from the grocery store, but we had used part of a tomato, and I wanted to make sure that these tomatoes don't go bad in my refrigerator before they get eaten. So I decided that sounded delicious, so I put some bacon in the oven, cooked it up nice and crisp, and then I used the sourdough bread and the lettuce and tomato that I already had in the fridge and made us each a couple of sandwiches, and they were delicious. It was a fantastic dinner to have with things that we already had on hand. So on this day, I decided we were going to have tacos for dinner because we did have part of the tomato left from when we made our BLTs. So I cooked a couple of 1-pound packages of the ground beef that we got when we bought our last half of a cow or quarter of a cow, whatever we got last. I think my husband is mowing right this minute, and so I'm just cooking everything up so that it will be ready when he comes in and is ready to eat. So I've just got the ground beef going in my skillet, and then I'm going to cut up some of the lettuce and the tomato that I had left over from our sandwiches the night before. So this ended up being really the perfect amount of lettuce and tomato for the two of us for dinner that night. And I know it seems like a lot, but I usually go ahead and make 2 pounds, even though it's just me and my husband, because then Joe can eat some of the leftover ground beef for, an extra meal if he wants, or if he's hungry later on. Sometimes he will take the ramen noodles without the seasoning packet, and he'll cook those up, and then he'll add some sort of leftover meat with them. So in this case, our leftover taco meat. And I think that's actually what he ended up doing. And so since Joe is still outside, or maybe he's not home from work yet, I don't remember exactly what was going on this particular day, I decided to go ahead and eat so that I could eat, first of all, while the meat was still warm, and also because I was starving. People usually laugh at the way I eat my tacos. They think it's weird, but I always mix everything together on my plate, and then I put it into my shell because I like for my bites of my taco to have a little bit of everything. So I put my meat, my lettuce, my tomato, my salsa, and I stir it all up. And then I'll put it into my shell and add cheese or whatever else I want to add at that time. So I did spend a little bit of my $20 budget this week, actually more than I thought I was going to spend. I bought a loaf of the keto bread. I was out of that. So I decided I would just go buy a loaf thinking it was, $2 or $3. It was actually $6, and so I don't want to buy that very often. So I decided that I was going to go ahead and make some sourdough sandwich bread. And so after I eat dinner later this evening, I go ahead and start some bread so that not only will I have bread for Joe for his lunch sandwiches, but I'll have a bread that's easier on my blood sugar so that it doesn't cause it to spike. And so there I am finishing up my tacos.
All right, I'm going to make some sourdough sandwich bread. I am following Lisa from Farmhouse on Boone. I'm using her recipe. My husband takes sandwiches for lunch almost every day. Sometimes he doesn't eat them. They end up going out to lunch, or like his brother buys them lunch or something. But if I can make this bread, then he won't have to buy it. So we're going to use a cup of butter. So other than the, I was supposed to use a half a cup of butter. Darn it. Okay. I swear I read that twice before I did it. That's all right. I will just pull half of it out. So you can also use coconut oil if you'd like. You'd use 113 grams, which is approximately half a cup. I'm going to weigh the rest of my ingredients. So we need 17 grams of salt, which is approximately a tablespoon. And all we're going to do is just add everything together in our bowl and mix it up. We're going to use 590 grams of water. We're going to use about a cup of bubbly active starter, or that'll be 227 grams. I fed this morning. It is very bubbly, very active. So 227. There we go, perfect. And I will go ahead and feed this again. And then we want 2 tablespoons of either honey or sugar. So that's 42 grams if you're using honey, 24 grams if you're using sugar. I'm going to use honey. So a lot of sourdough sandwich breads use yeast. I guess technically a sourdough discard bread would use yeast just to make sure that it's going to rise. This recipe does not use yeast. It's all sourdough. So we're going to mix everything together as soon as the honey is liquid enough for me to pour. And then we're just going to let the KitchenAid do the work of the kneading, and we're just going to let it bulk rise overnight, covered by a towel here on the counter, and that will give it the rise that we want for our bread. All right, let's see if we can get enough out of this now. So we need 42 grams. Last, we are going to add our flour. We need about 8 cups or 1,120 grams. So I'm going to put in about 1,000, and then I'm going to start mixing it. And then we'll add the last 3/4 cup to a cup as we need it. That way we don't have too much flour. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the stand mixer. I'm going to put my dough hook on. And we're just going to let this run. All right, I'm going to add a little more flour to this. I don't think it's got enough in it because it's still really, really sticky. So the dough is really sticky, so I added another half cup of flour and we're going to let it keep kneading for a few minutes. Okay, this looks a lot better. So now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to put it in this bowl, and we're going to let it bulk rise overnight. Just going to cover it with a damp towel so it doesn't get a dried skin on the top. Okay, so we're supposed to let this sit overnight 10 to 12 hours. Now, it is just a little after 8 o'clock here. It's like 10 after. So 6 o'clock will be 10 hours, 8 o'clock will be 12 hours. So I'll do it first thing in the morning when I get up. This will be the first thing that I do. I'm going to divide this into two balls. I'm going to put it in my loaf pans and then we're going to let it rise again. She did say do not let this overproof, because it will just be a gooey, sticky mess that won't really do anything. So hopefully I got the timing right on this. So we'll be back in the morning and we'll see how this turns out. Okay, it is the next day, and let me just double check what I'm supposed to do for this bread. Ooh, look how beautiful that looks. So we're going to punch this down. Oh, it's pretty sticky still. And I'm going to put a little bit of flour on my surface so that I can work. We're going to grease our pans. I'm just going to use spray on mine. But I'm going to spray them really well. You can also use butter, lard, or you can line them with parchment paper. Divide this in half. And we are just going to go ahead and shape our loaves. So I'm shaping this into a rough rectangle form. It's not going to be perfect because of the way my dough ball was. And then I'm just going to start rolling it. loaf pans. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other piece of dough. This one's more of a rectangle shape. And I'm going to kind of just pinch this down with my fingers as I roll it. Then I'm going to flatten the ends with my hand, tuck it under, and just that kind of flopped out. Put that one in my pan as well. Okay, so now I've got my 2 loaves. I'm going to set them to the side and just cover them up with a damp cloth for 2 to 4 hours or until they've doubled. We're going to give these a chance to do their second rise. It is pretty warm in my house, so it may not take the full 4 hours. Hopefully 2 will do it. So we're going to let that set, and when it's doubled, we're going to come back and put it in the oven. All right. So our bread dough has doubled up. I've got my oven preheated to 375. I am going to put an egg wash on this just to give it a little bit better browning. I'm going to use one of my silky eggs. That's probably about right for just these 2 loaves. And then we are going to put these in our 375-degree oven for 45 minutes. All right, so into the oven these go. We'll be back in 45 minutes to see how they look. Okay, our bread is done. Oh my goodness, look how beautiful that is. Holy cow. This one really rose. So it's got this beautiful brown crust. We're going to let that cool about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm going to dump it out of the pans. We're going to let it finish cooling completely on the rack before we cut into it. Otherwise, we'll end up with a gummy mess.
On this day, I decided we were going to have some shrimp fajitas for dinner, and since I had quite a bit of sourdough starter ready, I decided I was going to go ahead and make some homemade tortillas. So I doubled this recipe so that Joe would have extra tortillas to eat because he likes to eat them with breakfast and with other meals. And if you've never made homemade tortillas, they're very simple. These are pure sourdough. It's a sourdough discard recipe, and I did use about 1/3 whole wheat flour and 2/3 regular white flour. But really all it is it's water, oil, flour, salt, and in this case, the sourdough starter. They come together really easily, and they cook up nice, and they are so delicious fresh off the stove. So after I let my dough sit for about a half hour to rest, I just started pulling out bits of dough and making it into balls so that I could go ahead and roll it out. One thing when you are rolling out your tortillas is that you want to make sure that you get them as thin as you possibly can. You want them to be where you practically can see through them, because as you put them in the pan and they start cooking, they're going to draw up. And so you want them stretched out as much as you can. And so here I am just making up a couple of these. As you can see, none of mine are actually super round. They're round on a couple of edges, and they have little weird, they're more like a blobby ghost shape, but it doesn't matter. They worked for our dinner, and they tasted delicious. So I always just do just a little spritz of a nonstick spray in there, and then I will put my next tortilla in, and then you just let them cook about a minute or so on each side until it starts getting the little brown spots. It will start puffing up, and then you flip it over, let it cook on the other side, and there you go. And then I just threw them all on a stack and cooked that entire batch. So here I've got some pre-cooked shrimp. It's the small size, so it didn't have tails. It's perfect for a fajita type meal. So I'm just cooking those, or not cooking, I'm just heating them up in a garlic-infused oil. And then while that's heating up and kind of cooking down, I did go ahead and slice up some onion, and I had one red pepper left, so I went ahead and cut that up. I did also cut up a tomato to go in, and I put that in at the last minute. So I get all my vegetables ready and let the shrimp finish cooking or heating or whatever. And then I add my vegetables. I did add, I believe, a little bit of garlic to this. I do sometimes make my own seasoning mix. On this day, I just used a packet that I had already in my cabinet. I did go ahead and add some lime juice just to give it another kick of flavor after I added all my vegetables. And we let everything cook down. Then I added the tomatoes, and then I just let it sit for a little while so that everything was nice and flavored. And then we ate that with our homemade tortillas, and it was amazing. I like a little cheese on mine. And so that's what I did. And I think Joe is either still outside or he's getting ready, but he ate when he came in. So there we have another week of really simple meals using mostly what we already had in our house, and everything was easy and delicious. And I thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next video.